What can we expect out of this? Well, let me put it this way. Already, before the end of the year, 2013 has been rated as the least effective single year in the history of the Congress, and the 212th Congress has been rated the least productive ever. Why?
Because we have a divided Congress, Bill. I don't know if you've been paying attention the last 3 years. No, they hate each other. And we're about to enter total silly season. We're about to enter election season. In February, it'll really kick off in earnest, but we've kind of been in it for the last couple months. I mean,
we're never out of campaign
it
anymore.
And what the House has kind of figured out, that if they do nothing, it's actually better for them. Right now, all they need to do is sit back and kind of watch Democrats scramble around the Affordable Care Act, and that's it.
Right.
They're not going to do anything else. They're passing these, messaging bills. They're passing, sort of the smaller bills that the Senate is never, ever going to take up. And that's all they have to do right now.
Right. And John Boehner was asked about this by you and your colleagues.
Right.
And when we're talking about this 6 days, by the way, we are talking about the House, right?
The House. And the Senate is in, I think, for 4 or they're in for eight more days, because they're out this week. Mm-hmm. And so then they come back on Monday, and they'll probably be in for about 8 days. They always get Friday off, though.
Speaker Boehner was asked about this yesterday, and he said, "Hey, don't blame us. It's those guys' fault." Stevie, if we have that first, here's John.
Both the House and Senate have to do their jobs. The House continues to do its job. It's time for the Senate to get serious and doing theirs.
Now, I might point out the Senate has passed a farm bill. The Senate has passed an immigration bill. The Senate did pass a gun safety bill. The Senate did pass ENDA.
Right.
None of which have moved at all in the House. But John Boehner says, no, look at all the gazillion bills that we have passed this year.
Well, when you look at the number of bills passed by the House and the paltry number of bills passed by the Senate, you can see where the problem is.
But you called most of the bills that the problem with that statement is that most of the bills that they've passed in the House are what you called, that was a good phrase,
messaging bills.
Messaging bills,
right?
Which they know are going nowhere.
They're bills that, I mean, it makes sense for them, right? They're bills that reflect the priorities of the Republican.
But they're
House.
not serious.
But they're not bills that are going to move. And if you look at what the Senate has done, like specifically on immigration, that was a big comprehensive bill. Bipartisan. The Farm Bill was a big bipartisan bill. And if a farm bill doesn't get passed, they passed those two little bills, the Farm Bill bills, so they could go to conference. And that's really struggling right now, too. I mean, if a farm bill doesn't come out of conference, that's a pretty big deal.
So what you said, I think, is true. Well, first of all, one of the reasons that the House hasn't accomplished anything is because the people who are really running the House today, this is at least my version, who are the Tea Party minority, they don't want to accomplish anything, right? They're proud of the fact that they can go home and said, we promised you less government, and damn it, we delivered.
Yeah, and I mean that is certainly part of it. Their constituents don't want them to block what is coming out of the Senate. So if you have all of your constituents saying, please don't pass immigration, please don't pass ENDA, stop this, stop big government, then they have done their job according to the people that have voted them into office. So it's difficult for anyone who's looking at the big picture to kind of understand what's happening. But if you are a constituent of one of these members and they share your philosophy, then they're doing exactly what you sent them there to do.
Chris Van Hollen was sitting right where you are, the ranking Democrat on the House Budget Committee, Tuesday morning. We talked about this, and Congressman Van Hollen said this could change overnight. You could, in 24 hours, you could make it one of the most productive sessions of Congress if only one thing happened. if John Boehner would allow the full House to vote on immigration reform and and the other issues we talked about, which is true. I mean, Boehner himself could change this, couldn't he? Yeah. But he chooses not to.
He could, and that's the message coming from Democrats right now. Is their message is we can walk and chew gum at the same time, and Republicans can't. They're so singularly focused on repeal of the health care law that they can't do anything else. And so the message from the top of the Democrats is, they had a big poster. I think it was on Tuesday. It was like the scorecard, and everything was an F for House Republicans. Farm bill, budget, ending the sequester, and stuff that Democrats say they would absolutely support if it just would
and could probably get the votes for enough Republican votes to pass in the House. Yeah. I mean, every one of those things. At least Congressman Chris Van Hollen, Congressman John Yarmouth said yesterday the same thing. That every one of those would pass the House if
that gets Boehner in a lot of trouble every time he does that. Though he's done it on several things. Sandy, violence against women, fiscal cliff, and the most recent and the shutdown deal. And, he gets a lot of heat for it every time he does that. He doesn't like doing it. And
you know what Harry Truman said? Can't stand the heat?
Get out of the kitchen.
Get out of the kitchen.
Right.
No, exactly. So I want to come back to something you said. So Republicans, I agree with you. They figured, no, we'll do nothing. Mm-hmm. And we'll be okay because Obamacare is going to collapse, and then the Democrats will be scrambling, and we're going to run on Obamacare, and we're going to win on Obamacare. The only thing wrong with one thing wrong with that picture, I think, is what if by spring Obamacare is actually working and people are actually signing up? Well, and people are actually talking about the success they have signing up, and it looks like we're moving in that direction now. Then they're left with nothing to run on, aren't they?
It's going to be pretty hard if they don't come up with something to sell themselves. People
hard for Republicans if they don't come up with
their own plan. And Boehner even the other day, said, I believe it was Luke Russert who asked, if you would put a replacement bill on the floor. Before 2014.
I haven't heard the phrase repeal and replace for a year at least. Have you?
I haven't. I mean, they say it, but there's no, and Boehner sort of said, we'll see, because I think, they understand if they do nothing, it's a little easier than presenting an option that could be scored by CBO, that could be, looked at in sort of in a way. I mean, if you want to do a pick and choose your own adventure insurance, that's going to be expensive. And right now, what the numbers say for Obamacare, I mean, it could turn out to be wildly expensive. But right now, the people that do this say that it's not going to be.
Healthcare costs are actually coming down. It just seems to me that, this is a risky strategy for the Republicans, because if we get into the spring, and it doesn't have to be 7 million people. Mm-hmm. 3 million, 4 million, 5 million, if they've signed up and they're happy with their programs. And again, then what do Republicans have to offer, right?
It's going to be hard to say, I'm going to take this away.
Yeah.
Once you give something to someone, it is difficult to take it away from them. That's just the way it goes. So, I also think that they're moving slowly away from the repeal stance, because they understand that the market's too far gone at this point. Insurance company have been preparing for years for this. People have invested, billions of dollars in this law, and if it all goes away, there's going to be a lot of stakeholders and consumers who are going to be upset about that.